Robin is a graduate of Ithaca College. She's won a bunch of awards, a bunch of different things. She's really cool, I think. An award-winning broadcast journalist, both in radio and television. She's currently the co-host of NPR and WBUR's big weekday news magazine show, or afternoon news magazine show, Here and Now. And she does a bunch of stories, a bunch of really cool things. And yeah, if you wanted to introduce yourself.
Sure. And I'll say a couple things. First of all, we're a morning show on the West Coast.
I didn't think about that. That's interesting.
And forget London. This is so thrilling for me. I have such great memories of Ithaca, although few of them with the Park School, because I did not study journalism, and I feel like such a fraud here. But I can talk more about that. It wouldn't have occurred to me in 1968, 69. Barbara Walters hadn't started yet. There were a few women. This was back when even local newscasts were double male anchors. So it would not even have occurred to me. I did have my big claim to fame. I had Rod Serling for a teacher, of course, the Twilight Zone. I was so blessed. It's like the greatest academic blessing of my life. He had to qualify to be in his class, and I was chosen to be in his master's class for 2 years, and it was just the greatest experience. I urge you guys, at the 50th anniversary of Ithaca, I went back and did a story, and there's all this great footage at the Park School of his class, and it's all in black and white and everything, and it's just, he was extraordinary, a gentleman, what a scholar, brilliant and everything, but that's as close as I came. And I actually thought, right after college, I was a governess, trying to find a job and everything. And I actually stumbled into all of this, and I will now proceed to tell you how this all happened, because it's a story that really won't help any of you at all, because this doesn't happen anymore. I was a governess, and I fell in love with this brand new at the time show, just started, called Sesame Street. And I said, that's it. That is it. And I quit my job, and I got in my car, and I drove literally to Channel 2 in Boston, where I'd never been. I'm a New Yorker. I'm from New York. But when I grew up, everything sort of smart and sophisticated, I thought, came from Boston. So I drove to WGBH, changed in my car, drove right to the door, walked in, and presented myself to the receptionist. I said, I'm here to interview with Jim Henson. I didn't have an appointment. I didn't have anything. I just had this, I'm going to work with Jim Henson. And she said, oh, honey, they make that in New York. And I had no money. So she said, look, down the street at this place called TV 38, I think they're hiring. Well, TV 38 in Boston at that time was this powerhouse sports broadcasting arm. It was just amazing. They had the Bruins, the Red Sox, the football. They had it all, everything with the Celtics. And I got a job there as a secretary to the production manager, which was so offensive to secretaries. I had, no idea what I was doing. And very soon, now this is 1972, 73, and very soon, some of the things that still, there's a whiff of them in the work world, but this is going to sound like the Paleozoic era to you guys. But very soon, things that happened to women in the workplace started to happen. They saw that I was at least industrious, and I caught on quick to things. And so they fired my boss, who was a great guy named Mike Siegley. To this day, I feel bad about this. They fired him and made me the production coordinator. Yeah. He had been the production manager with all these benefits and management. I did exactly what he did. When visiting teams and visiting TV stations needed to rent out big, 18-wheel trucks that they were going to do broadcasts with, that was my job. But I didn't get any increase in pay. I think I made $9,000 a year as the production manager of TV 38. And as the fifth woman, and then I found out that the reason they hired me, they had about 130 people working there, but they needed 5 women, because you needed a woman to sit in for the receptionist every day of the week when she went on her lunch hour. So I would be answering the phones my day of the week for this wonderful receptionist. And if somebody wanted to talk to the guy about the rental truck, I'd say, hold on, please. I'd put them on hold, and I'd come back on. Yeah, this is Robin. I'm the production manager. It was just dizzying how some things are still the same, but how different it was. The one glorious thing that happened is that my bosses came to me and everybody was very, very nice. I don't have any of those complaints that would come later in my career. But my bosses said, we want you to start being a director. Now, I didn't even know what the heck a puck was. I didn't know any. I don't think I'd ever seen hockey, but suddenly there I was directing Boston Bruins hockey from the control room. There was a first director who was extraordinary. He would be the one calling the shots on the ice, but I would be the one rolling back the slow-mo and rolling in the commercials and speaking to the commentators, and sometimes taking over the game when there was a lull in the game. And so that the director could go. So I'm directing hockey. I was directing baseball. I was going to the ballpark and hanging out with, baseball players. I became best friends with WBUR. I mean, it was stunning. And I also was a very good director. The next thing I know, I'm getting a call from a local TV station saying, we were thinking of starting a women's program. Would you be interested? And I said, well, when, what time? 5:30 Sunday morning. I said, sure, I'll put together a women's program. I started thinking about that with my girlfriends. Like, how would we put on a TV show? Then I noticed that the huge 50,000 watt radio station, which was right down the road from us, WBZ, one of the iconic AM radio stations, it's still the #1 station in Boston. It does that 23 minutes of news, like 1010 wins New York. And I wrote this very serious handwritten 2-page letter to the program director. And I said, I cannot believe that in this age of the women's movement that you do not have any women on the air. There was not one woman on the air in 1973 in WBZ. On a Tuesday, I got a call in my production coordinator office. Hi, this is Dave Graves. This is Robin. Yeah. Well, you wrote me this letter. I read this letter. What are you doing Saturday night? And I said, I cannot believe I wrote you this sincere 2-page letter, handwritten, and you are hitting on me. He said, I'm not hitting on you. I have an opening midnight to 5, Saturday nights. Do you want to shift? I'm thinking I am the hottest ticket ever. I'm 23. I am directing Bruins and Red Sox. I am hosting a show which we named Womenkind with a Y. I would put my hair up like this in a bun so I'd look older, and we'd do serious women's issues at 5:30 Sunday mornings. And now I'm going to do midnight to 5 overnight, 50,000 watt station. I'm heard all across the country. Well, no, I was just the girl in town when the women who came before me forced Congress to pass the all the fairness requirements, including equal opportunity in hiring. And they based the licenses on whether or not you filled a quota of women, people of color, people with disabilities. And I just, all these program directors are going, there's this girl, do anything. And that's how it all started. I climbed on the backs of all of those women who forced that through. Now, it turns out I was kind of good at it because I like to tell stories. I love telling stories. I come from a storytelling family. Most of them became actors. I would be the director. And it went on from there. I hosted a television show that was a wildly popular local program called Evening Magazine. And at the end of this tenure on Evening Magazine, I did it for 3.5 years. It was the #1 rated locally produced 7:30 time slot show, the first in the country to use videotape. And it was just the best time I've ever had in my life. And we had extraordinary success. I had notched my salary up to $23,000 a year. And suddenly my beloved male co-host left. He went to CBS, and they hired a new guy who became my beloved second co-host. He's still my best friend, but they hired him at $80,000. This is in 1979. I remember making 23, and I'm like the #1 TV host in Austin. And I just said, what do you do? Well, no, we'll fix it. We'll fix it. But, we couldn't get a man for less than 80,000. Well, continuing the theme of this is something that's never going to happen for you. I was so angry and so hurt, and I worked so hard that I picked up the phone and called information and got the phone number for NBC in New York, 30 Rockefeller Plaza. I told her. she gave me the phone number, and I called the phone number, and a receptionist answered. I think they have like 10, at that time. And I said, I'd like to speak to a producer. And she said, well, what producer? I said, like a program producer. She said, okay. And she put me through to Herb Dudnick, one of the great all-time NBC producers. And he said, well, actually, we've had our eye on you, and we're developing a TV show. Why don't you come down? And within a few weeks, I had quit, and I joined NBC for a television show that was supposed to happen. Yay! Well, the television show, I went to the television show, just wasn't starting. Like, what's going on? It's not starting. And they put me on the 14th floor with David Letterman's show. What was the plan of the then president of NBC was he was going to do this brand new thing in the mornings. He was going to have hinge programming. So the David Letterman show would move, and it would be in the morning, and it would hinge on my show, so that I would be on the last 15 minutes of his show, and he'd be on the first 15 minutes of mine, like 9 to 11 o'clock. Has anyone ever heard of a worse idea ever? But David Letterman at 9 o'clock in the morning? Nobody. I love David Letterman. You don't want David Letterman in the morning. So it was kind of like not really happening, but they put me on the Today Show, which I adored, and I was filling for Jane Pauley, and it was wonderful. David Letterman, sadly, for several years, got sidelined because he went to CBS, but there was a contract dispute. So it was just this mess. And then NBC got sold. But before that, I have a prop. I climbed up into my attic loft where this is prominently displayed. This is my 1982 Ithaca College Young Alumni of the Year. Wonderful. I was so honored. And it's cautionary tale, though, because I'll read you the first sentence. It says, since your graduation in 1972, you've in just 10 short years been recognized as the most able and competent television journalist in this country. Your rise to prominence included in rapid succession. They go through I forgot. I didn't forget. I did the Midnight to 5, all this stuff, to the Today Show. It's just amazing, and then it goes on. Well, yeah, that was that moment in time. And then everything just went to hell in a handbasket. NBC got sold. Anybody who didn't have a renewed contract, which mine was about to be renewed, gone. And I spent several years kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do. And that would happen 2 more times over the last 40 years. And each time I didn't have that, whoa, you're sitting in for Jane Pauley on the Today Show. This is so cool. Or, the second one was I was doing a show called USA Today, the television show. Each time that didn't happen, that thing ended, I did the best work of my life. I mean, it just stays with me, this thought. By the way, USA Today, the television show, was just it's one of the biggest failures in television history. I'm quite proud, of being involved in it, because they did it and they sold it as what was going to be the hottest show in like at 7:30 at night in America, just as cable hit. And they promised an audience share. This was 1989. They promised an audience, and they sold it on an audience share that no show was ever going to get again, because the audience was about to split up towards what we have today, where you're lucky if you get a 6 rating. They promised like a 30 rating. So our entire time doing this show was paying people back who had paid us to be on the show. It was not sustainable. But here's another cautionary tale. So now I'm, like an NPR host, which is really great and everything. But when I exited USA Today, the television show, how I found out? There were 4 hosts, like, Life, Money, the 4 sections. I was Life. And there were 4 of us, great people. And they came into this huge, very cold, ridiculous set to take the new pictures for us. And they kept saying to me and the guy who was the Money section host, could you just move back a little bit? We're looking for some depth. And so we were like 2 feet behind Edie and, the sports guy, Bill McAtee. And they're like, well, we want you a little bit further back, because we're just really looking to show the depth. And Kevin and I were looking at each other like, wow, at one point we were like 50 feet back because we were being cut out of the pictures, because we were being fired. the next day because the show couldn't sustain 4 anchors. So I'm kind of like skidding through everything, but letting you know how capricious it can be and how, the highs and lows are just gobsmacking. But after I left that show, they had moved me out to Los Angeles. That's a funny story. My boss had come in, an iconic editor from the New York Times was hired to work on this silly TV show. What a waste. And he came in and he said, I need to go to Los Angeles. We need more West Coast stuff. I said, oh, we're way ahead of you. We have a trip planned in about a month. And we're going to go for 3 weeks. We've got all these stories lined up. He goes, I want you to go a little sooner and I want you to stay a little longer. Boss, how soon? How long? Well, tomorrow. And I'm thinking like 3 years. And he wasn't kidding. They hired, I barely grabbed my dog. They hired a company to pack my things. They sent me to LA. By the time I kind of spiraled out of this whole USA Today thing 3 years later and unpacked my things, which I never unpacked for 3 years, they had packed my garbage cans with the garbage in it, which was now solid, like stones. But after that happened, I was in LA and I was kind of like, moving from friend's house to friend's house and, trying to figure out what I would do. And my then boyfriend said, God, my father's got something really wonderful really strange going on. His father was in a Rotary Club in Northern California. And this was 1989. And the president of this club's son had come home sick. And nobody could figure out what it was. And then we know what it was. It was AIDS, right? And this was everybody's favorite young man. And so, as they did with most AIDS victims back then, they hid them, kind of in the bedroom. And this is before Magic Johnson. This is before, all the splashy, the band played on, stuff like that. And so the president of this club, who, what an incredible man, said, no, we're not going to hide my son. I want our club to make a little movie about it, like a little film that we can show like at Thursday afternoon Rotary lunches. And I said to Greg, hello, freelancer now, which is the euphemism for, you're not working, freelancer, and I can produce, I can edit, let's do it. So I said I would do it. And we fly. I've got a crew that I used to work with. It's a great thing about all the places you work. You'll have friends who will do anything for you. It's just great. And you for them. And there was a camera crew that I had worked with years before. And they said, we'll do it. Everybody said, we'll do it for pro bono. And the first day that I sat with his family as they agonized over whether or not to make this little film, right in the middle of filming that, and some of the siblings, weeping, I don't think we want to put them on display. Dad, why do you want to do this? We can help other people. And, I'm just sitting there like, oh my God. And I said, I can see what's going on here. Just know, why don't we film? And then if you change your mind and you don't want this to be a Rotary film, it'll be a home movie. I'll just give it to you. I don't care. I'm not, we're not making anything. There's no money involved here. And they, okay. And as soon as that happened, suddenly the aid comes down and the son was dying. And he died right in front of us within that half hour. And that was the birth of a documentary that I did. Out of work. I'm out of work. This was just, beg, borrowing, and stealing editing time and video, and extraordinary story about the Los Altos Rotary Club of Los Altos, California, this conservative area that thought AIDS had nothing to do with them, and they didn't want to have anything to do with their president's son's illness. But one by one, people started coming forward from other clubs saying, I'm gay and I'd like to be a part of this. And there was a man who was a member of the club who, this kind of roly-poly guy, he was a Holocaust survivor, and he owned the stationery store, and he led the Christmas parade every year as Santa Claus. Everybody knew him. And he said, I'll join the task force. I mean, maybe I can help because people like me. And then suddenly I get a call one day from Dude, the father, the head of the club. That's because we've talked to doctors, we've done all this filming, but we're still having a hard time. The club was still kind of, what's going on here? And Dude said, remember how the doctor told us that if you're in a room with 100 people, one of them will have AIDS? And I said, yeah. He said, our club is 100 people. one of them has AIDS. Just come, bring the camera. So I came, and in the middle of this extraordinary Rotary luncheon on a Thursday afternoon, the president gets up, rings the bell, welcomes everybody. They make announcements, and they say, and one of our members has something to say to you. And it's Walter, the Santa Claus, the stationery store owner that everybody loved. And he struggled through this, speech to his fellow Rotarians. I still get emotional. 1989, about how he got AIDS from a blood transfusion. And he says, I've been hearing you. I've been hearing everything you say about how this has nothing to do with us. And, but I go to support groups and it's all young people. And I hear what you're saying to me, but I'm this AIDS pandemic and I need you to be my support group. Whoa, it was just, and they went on to form the Rotary AIDS Task Force. Every single member to this day of the Los Altos Rotary Club joins and spends time on the task force. In the beginning, after we made the film, which nobody would take it, nobody would air it. I went to all my old friends at the networks and they were all like, well, yeah, Barry Diller, nah. And I had a friend that I'd gone to school with who said, well, I have this, it was the precursor to CNBC. He said, I got this little business channel, Rotary is Business, we could put it on here. And so we did. And we won the Peabody and we won the CableACE Award. We beat Ted Turner and Discovery. But more important, that club, still going strong. You can Google it, the Rotary, Los Altos Rotary Task Force. They fanned out across the country. The response was just extraordinary. People across the country saying, please come help us. We can't get our town to accept this. And my son's in the back bedroom. So they started by Rotarians. They got their marching orders. Here's your flight. Here's your ticket. You're going to so-and-so. You're speaking to this club. Extraordinary. And then they started going internationally. It's now, I think there's thousands and thousands of copies in like 25 languages. And they've moved on to transmission in Africa. That's their big topic now, transmission of AIDS from women to babies in Africa. And every member of the Los Altos Rotary Club puts in their time on this. I didn't make one penny. I was unemployed. Poor me. So it's a way of sharing kind of the vagaries of this, but I have never been happier than making that documentary. And the NPR gig came across about 20 years ago. And it's actually the longest I've spent somewhere. And I am considering, I miss telling those stories where you don't, the long form, where you're not quite sure where it's going to tell you, but you just, something in you says, I know this is a story. And you don't have anywhere to air it and you don't have any money to make it, but I'm kind of moving towards a few more shots at doing that. But that, I know you have questions. I hope you have questions, but that sort of gives you a little bit of the landscape of 48 years, which I can't believe, but starting in 1972, of something that, like I said, you're not going to drive up. Please don't anybody drive up to GBH TV and ask to work, on Frontline. Although, why not? It might work, but it's so competitive right now. J schools weren't filled the way they are now. And now there's also there's broadcasting and journalism. And so, there's a whole landscape that didn't even exist back then. And there's, thankfully, women, just as I've always said, my mother would have been a great producer. Women are producers, they're natural producers. But, when I was coming up, they were producing the PTA, and their kids' field trips. And, it's just harnessing that talent, innate talent. I think our industry is finally getting a little more diverse. Really, it didn't do well there. But it's a very, very different and competitive landscape for you. But you also have so much more to choose from. Podcasts, all sorts of different ways to get stories out. So, there's a benefit there too. but I guess I just, I wanted to give that as a kind of a roadmap to start with, and then ask if, any of you have any questions of me, knowing that now.
Yeah, I think also, I think it would be nice to just, you've been in this NPR gig for a long time. You're heard by so many people every day.
Millions.
Millions. So I thought it would be nice to give us just a snapshot of what your day-to-day kind of.
Yeah, that's fine. Also, I was not of the NPR world. I came, as you just heard, through commercial radio. And I'll give you some broader thoughts about that. But it is insane, primarily because you just heard my whole background. There are a lot of people, and this is not a qualifying thing. This is not comparative, but there are a lot of people who work at NPR and certainly at other places, other news outlets, who they are focused on doing their interview. And they're very good at their interviews, and they do not edit. They never touch, well, you can't touch tape now anyway, they never touch tape. Um, uh, they're not interested in adding the bells and whistles. And I should have gone into film. I mean, going back to Rod Serling, the one, I remember something he told me, and I saw him say this, and when I saw the footage at the 50th anniversary, he would always say to the class, never let an idea die a bornin in your head. And I thought, and I did. I had several film ideas, and I did. I hesitated. You cannot hesitate. But that's kind of who I am, more of a storyteller. And so what I do may not be the same as what someone else does. But someone else might be like, I am reading, I am, focusing on this interview, I'm reacting to the news. But what we do on our show, all the hosts, is we're up at 5 a.m. and you watch the TV, you read newspapers, you have to be read in at the morning meeting. Do whatever workout or breakfast you have, and then we meet between sometimes 7, as early as 7:30 or 8. And in that meeting, we already have a storyboard up. Probably you have them. I think there's a whiteboard behind you. Where we know that some of the holes are filled. Books that we've read, book interviews, things that can be done, which, by the way, are fewer and fewer because of the news just changing so fast, but things that can be done that won't react to the news. So we come in with maybe 40% done. That's 60% left to do. And it's because we're a noon show as well. So unlike Morning Edition or All Things Considered, which are huge. I mean, Morning Edition has 40 million listeners, but they're not in the news cycle. So it's rare. It's more rare that they will have to react to things. We are constantly reacting to things. Damn those presidents who have press conferences at noon, like Trump did all the time, because you have to throw everything out. But we decide as a group with top managers, we have all submitted ideas that we've found over the course of the morning from 5 to 7. They winnow them down. And the producers go off, the bookers, hardest job in the world, and try to get people to guest those segments. I go off and start frantically reading about everything we've decided to do, or finish some editing for something I'm working on. And then it starts. You're like interviewing, you're like doing maybe 3 interviews in the morning, because not everybody can be sitting there to be on your show. We have 2 hours and, I should know this, but like something like 40 segments. So not everybody can sit there for their segment, and some you don't want to trust to do that. So we start taping people when we can grab them. Now we're down to about maybe 30%, which is maybe 40, which every day, which is live. The first segment's usually live. There's conversations in there that are live. The show goes from 12 to 2. From 2 to 4 in the afternoon, we do 2 things. We start taping those pre-taped pieces. You might have 2, like with music or something that needs to be, but we're also keeping an eye on the news because we're constantly doing rollovers for the different time zones. So the news stories usually get redone because they voted, and now he sent another tweet out, and you do that segment over. So you're sitting there when it rolls around on the clock in the other time zone, and it comes up live, and you just do it live in that show. And then you tape in the afternoon. I come home at night. I edit. I love editing. Editing for me is like knitting. I read books. If there's films I need to watch, I watch films. I go to sleep, and I do it all over again the next day. It's a lot of work. a lot of work. I miss field pieces, but most of that is the pandemic. I used to do many more field pieces where I'd go out with a kit and get a story. I miss the long form, but I'm very grateful for this.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to bring it, all the way back real quick because we're all, except for some of us, from the Park School journalism students with whatever,
fraud.
whatever. You were not, and neither was
fraud.
Jeff, who is watching right now. And so I wanted to hear kind of what not having that specific background, how, like, what unique things did that bring for you?
I don't know that I'd know that, not having done the other thing. I will say the thing that I said to you earlier today when we talked, the thing that it is giving you is practice. Oh my God, how wonderful. I mean, just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So you're not, doing it, as I was midnight to 5 before, 40 million people across the country on BZAM. But the other thing I did think it gave me was I think that the ethics of journalism, I don't think you need to learn that. I mean, you've all seen maybe broadcast news. No, was it broadcast news? The one where, what's his name? You can't lie. You can't fake something. You can't edit something in. You can't, of course you can't do that. So the ethics, I think, most people get the who, what, where, when, why. I think it makes me more conversational. And if it's one thing I would say to any student, be careful not to fall into the trap that I think can happen. And it happens with the most professional people in the world. You're in a hurry and you bring out the template and you say things today. You say things like, I wish I could come up with a sentence right now, but you speak in a way you'd never speak. And a lot of times I'll hand a lead back and I'll say, I would not say that. Of course, I can't think of anything right now, but, trying to get all the newsy words out, get them out of there and, write it in a newsy way, because then it makes you centered and you're feeling like this is news. But then how would you tell it to a friend? And I do think I have more of a propensity to do that. That started very early on, of being more conversational. But I think what you're getting is invaluable, and I'm not just saying that. I think that getting to practice, getting to see. I wasn't schooled in, and I wish I wasn't schooled in past big news stories. I hope you're doing that. I hope you're doing like, and here's this case from such and such and here's how it was covered. And I wish I knew more about that stuff. Because it informs us. Mm-hmm. Now, I will tell you a little bit about my nephew, who I'm bragging on right now. Let's see. He's going to kill me. So this is my nephew at like 8. They're both nephews, but this is the one I'm talking about. So he didn't get into the schools of his choice. He's from here in Cambridge. And he didn't get into, he all his life, he wanted to be a journalist. Ran the college, was on the college newspaper, high school newspaper, did sideline commentary for the Cambridge Ringe and Latin basketball team. He wanted to be a journalist. Didn't get into the schools of his choice. He said, you know what? I'm going to Northeastern. He went to Northeastern right down the road here and got into their co-op program. Do you have a co-op? Do you have any co-op programs?
No, but we have a lot of like internship connections. And
That's
stuff.
great. That's
Anne-Marie,
great.
who is in the audience, I'm sure can
talk to you. Co-op, the thing about a co-op, I mean, it wasn't considered the best school. It's got a far better reputation now. But the thing that he ended up doing is you work for a semester at WBZ Radio. He went there first. Then he was at the Boston Globe. Mm-hmm. By the way, he was at the Boston Globe when he was at the Boston Globe. Yes, he was at the Boston Globe and at Northeastern. He was doing the co-op at the Boston Globe when the Boston bombing happened. And just a little detour, if I may here. You guys don't know this story, I'm sure. But, that was an agonizing time here. It was right, we could see it from our offices, and everybody knew people there. And it was on a Monday. And by the bombers were on the loose. And so by Thursday, we were on lockdown, which meant that only like a handful of us were allowed to cross police lines to come into work. Like 6 of us came in to put on everything. Mm-hmm. When Wednesday night, they found footage from a Lord and Taylor camera across the street from the bombing. And I saw the footage and I was like, that younger one, he looks like Sean Penn. Then Thursday night, there was the chase. There was all the stuff in Watertown where they chased the kid and the kid was held up anyway. Friday morning, like at 6 a.m., I was in the studio, and we were doing round the clock. Our station was being picked up by 700 NPR stations across the country. And it came across a 19-year-old from Cambridge Ringe and Latin High School. Wait a minute. I know I had the backyard parties. I had the sleepovers. I had the graduation party. I didn't recognize the name at first because we called him Jahar. We didn't use Jokar, that name. And I woke my nephew up at Northeastern and I said, go turn on the TV. And he came back. He said, it's Jahar, his best childhood friend. And we put him on the air. We put him on WBUR. He was broadcast around the world. He was the first person to say who this younger bomber was, who was still hiding in Watertown. It turns out in a boat. You could not shock me anymore. This kid, this has never happened before or since. Because there's always someone who comes forward and says, well, that person was a little iffy when there's a huge event like this. Nothing. This was everybody's favorite. Turned out to be a dope dealer, which I wasn't happy about, but everybody's favorite. He, captain of the wrestling team. People adored him. He's in all the prom pictures. You'll never see one of them. 80 families said, I'm not doing this. We all think that his brother converted him to a terrorist, but it was stunning. And here's Zolan, who just woke up, 19 years old. He's like, what the hell? And we're peppering him with questions. And at one point, my colleague, Bob Oakes, the Morning Edition host, said, is there anything, was he bullied at school for being a Muslim? And, Cambridge is an inner city school. And my nephew says, no, you get in line behind the Zoroastrians. He said, no, it was just kind of funny in a ridiculous way. Well, that shock to these kids who loved this kid and were so failed by him. They all had the FBI knocking on their doors. What did you know? Life was very hard. It was terrible. He turned to me one day, he said, we're all going to make up for him. You just wait and see. We're going to make up for him. And he's now 26 and he just joined the White House correspondent staff of the New York Times. He's on the front page of the New York Times every day. He went to the Times, he went to the Globe, he went to all sorts of different programs for journalists, you should have him come talk to you guys. He went to all of these, whatever it was, Missouri School of Journalism is holding a week-long, I'm there. He did anything. He went and Columbia is doing a thing. He went, he found all of these programs and things you could do. He went to South Africa. He wrote for the Cape newspaper there for a while and got a job at the Wall Street Journal and was hired in New York City police beat and then was hired by the New York Times a couple of years ago. He's been on the border, doing the border and immigration, and he just, sits right there with Maggie Haberman and he just got added to the, 6-member White House team. And so, there's just that's not the best school. You know what I'm saying? So I just think there's just different avenues, but now I do think you have to take the course you've taken. I would say I'm glad you're at Ithaca, but I don't think it's very hard to get into any kind of job right now without having studied journalism. Where was I? How did I get off on that? I don't know.
Yeah, no, like we don't have the co-op here, but I mean, we have a lot of internship connections, but something I think, that of course, I'm biased being the news director of it, but something I think, really pride ourselves on is our student media programs, whether it be ICB, ICTV, or the
Great.
Ithacan. It's all like, I
That's
really emphasize that, like, in order to get what you want to out of this school, whether you're Parky or not, you got to get involved right away, and you
yeah.
got to do these things.
Oh, listen, and I've listened to some of it, as I told you. It's so great. It's so fun. Internships are fabulous. A lot of internships go to jobs. Um, Anything you can do to try something. Because the other thing is, you may not like it. Find what you love. Find the thing that makes you get up in the morning. You're like, oh my God, I can't wait to do this. I spoke before some students once, and I said, why do you want to do this? There was a group of them, and they said, well, I want to be a news anchor. Why do you want to be a news anchor? Well, why? I said, you better go get yourself a journal, and you better start writing. You better have something you bring, some passion in there. It just, you right. Go take a microphone, record anything that comes across your path. Just, oh my God, I wish I'd known about that. I have so much fun recording stuff. I can't even stand it. I love it so much. And I want, Jay, I think you have a wonderful way. I listen to Ithaca now. I think you have a lovely way. And I also want to comment on a segment. I loved the whole show. There was an activist interviewed. I loved that. But Sarah did a piece on this phone book thing, the 6 degrees of, oh my God, it's a podcast. You guys should do that. She's gone. No, she should do it. And if she
She's
doesn't,
still in town, but I'll connect.
Yeah, you guys should do this, because I might steal it. But there was this thing she did on Sherman Kelly. You all know the 6 degrees. She, for the just phone call to 6 people. What a great idea. And suddenly I'm listening to Dancing in the Moonlight, and I'm like, Buffalongo. When I went to Ithaca, he graduated. Sherman Kelly, who was who wrote that song, Dancing in the Moonlight, and told her this incredible story about being beaten up and how he came to write the song. It's an incredible story. Before he was in King Harvest, which had the hit with that, he was in Buffalongo, which was our like house band. And that's how I know Sherman Kelly. It's like, oh my God, there's Sherman Kelly. And Orlean, which is another great Are they still around, Orlean? Dance with me. Oh, you should find them. You should do a segment on the richness of like 60s, 70s music that's hiding in your hills. Orlean, Dance with Me. You found Sherman, but you've got the whole Todd Rundgren, Hello, It's Me, the whole Woodstock area. Oh my God, you should do a whole hour on that. But it was so much fun to hear that segment. Yeah, make a note.
Yep.
It was so much fun to hear that segment. And, magazine shows are, I just think, fantastic. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the only other question I really personally had before I open it up to everyone is the Los Altos story. I watched that today, and I was just so like, I was amazed with how intimate everything was, and how hard it is to find those stories, and B, convince them that this is something that's better documented than left. And I just wanted to ask, kind of like, what is your idea of how to get to that? And how do you think you would go about it today if you were to do a similar thing?
Same way. First of all, listen. I mean, other people were talking about this going on in Los Altos. Oh, there's a president of the Los Altos Club, and his son came home with AIDS, and he wants to do some. Oh my God, son came home with AIDS in 1989. That's a big deal. I can't tell you how many times I hear people in our morning meetings that go, oh man, this is an incredible thing. Did you hear about this? And they're tweeting and I'm like, book it, hear it, hear something as a story. You really you can develop that muscle. Just really hear it. Like that's a story. Another time that I would point to, and I have these spikes. You're not going to get it all the time, but you have these wonderful spikes. And when I was working for NBC News, this is after the Today Show, I had been going through a lot of things in my family. I didn't recognize it at the time because we never talked about alcoholism, and I didn't recognize it. We were all really nice people, and we all looked good, and nobody was like in the gutter, so you couldn't see it, but it was happening. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. This is crazy making. And I passed by a bookstore here in Harvard Square. I live in Harvard Square, and in the window was this book, Adult Children of Alcohol. Like it covered the whole window. And it was like, oh, in a choir. And I went in and I said to the cashier, because I knew everything about books, I said, what is that? He says, I do not know. It came out of Rutgers University, Alcohol Study Center. I don't know, but I cannot keep it in stock. We just keep filling the window. So I read it and I went, oh my God, there's a whole movement happening there. You're kind of young, so forgive me. You may already know this, but it used to be when you talked about alcoholism, there were AA rooms, and that was usually men, and there was an Al-Anon for families, and that was their wives. And that was it. And what was happening in this moment was that children who had, as little kids, had grown up in families where there were drinking problems, were struggling as adults. It was a brand new idea. Isn't that wild? I'm telling you right now, there's a new idea that nobody's ever thought of in healthcare that's happening right now. This was the equivalent back then in 1985, 86. And they were starting to kind of go, wait a minute, I'm having troubles with intimacy. I can't stop crying. I keep trying to fix people. This personality was forming. And this wonderful woman, Dr. Janet Whitehead, wrote this book. And I said to her, I said to NBC News, trust me. And they trusted me. And they gave me the last 5 minutes of a nightly newscast. This was back, Huntley Brinkley, Tom Brokaw. This was like a big deal. And so I interviewed Janet Whitehead at Rutgers about this concept, this thinking. And she's explaining, well, are you feeling like this or feeling like that? And people forget that if your father comes home at 6, 7 o'clock at night and he has 2 scotches, that's the only person you know. You've never met your father, because you never see him. And if he's golfing all day Saturday and Sunday and having martinis at lunch, you've really never met him. You've met this funny man. All people this was, again, 50s, 60s. So this is when these people grew up. And I see her go, hold on a second. And I'm like, I'm interviewing her. The camera's there. The sound man's behind me. The cameraman's there. And she says, cameraman, Robin, you have to leave. And we turn around and the sound man is sobbing on the floor. He self-identified in the middle of the interview. I'm like, there's something going on. She allowed us to come to an ACOA. There was this new movement called ACOA, Adult Children with Alcohol. It's supposed to be very anonymous, but they let us come in to talk to them. We didn't see a meeting, but we talked to them, and they're telling all their stories. They're all like 40, 30, years old, and they're talking about this impact. I put this story together. The engineer in the control room, now this is running on nightly news. It's introduced by the anchor. The engineer in the control room collapses and self-identifies. The switchboard crashes at NBC. So many people wanted to know about this. Now, there were people who fought this idea. I'm trying to explain it to people. And this is a hard-nosed time. This is like we were bombing Libya. That was the first story. We killed Gaddafi's children. Then people were like, and in fact, the president of the network at that time, Lawrence Grossman, came out of his office and came down this spiral ladder into the huge NBC bull. Everybody's talking about this story, and oh my God, my phone's ringing off the hook, and people want to know what this is, and people are crying. And the president of the network, no offense, but old white guy, comes down the ladder and goes, what the fuck was that? So not everybody's going to be interested in what you hear, but keep your ear to the ground. I mean, that's the number one thing I'd say. And then when you do meet people, recognize that you are on sacred ground. I mean, I think we've forgotten that. Like when you talk to somebody, and when you have your first big losses, and maybe some of you already have, when you have your first big losses, you're going to be like, I can't believe I shoved that person in front of a camera, and this is sacred ground, then when we get to talk to people who are hurting so much. And I just, and listen, just listening. I lived with those people for months, to make that story. It's 25 minutes long or something like that. But they have to have your trust. And like halfway through, they were like, we're going to make a documentary. The siblings were all, and then Walter dies, the Santa Claus. And then it became the thing that lifted that family. That's for sure. Their son didn't die in vain. And I mean, the president of the Rotary Club was on President Clinton's AIDS task force from that film. You guys seen Philadelphia? Oh my God. You must watch the movie Philadelphia. Tom Hanks stars as a young man who comes home with AIDS. His mother is played by Joanne Newman. It's directed by, oh, help me here. Jesus, I can't remember. I can't believe I'm forgetting this. He became a friend. Huge producer. Everybody who can Google faster than me, Google it. Philadelphia movie. Oscar movie, Philadelphia, directed by Jonathan Demme. So, this movie is now, it's gone. It's put it out in the world. It's out in the world. One day I answer the phone. Hi, it's Jonathan Demme. I just saw your documentary, and I want that family to come. And I want Joanne Woodward. You've seen it now. I want Joanne Woodward in Philadelphia to be your mother in your documentary. And she is. She's this kind, love. She patterned her character after that mother. I would say to see Philadelphia. Oh my God. But anyway, how do we get there? I don't know. Oh, no, I don't know. I don't know how I got there. Do you remember, Jay?
Intimacy.
Oh, intimacy. No, I mean, you have to feel it when you're doing it. A lot of people fake it now because look, back when I was first working, you could not get these issues in primetime TV. They were relegated to housewife TV. It was very, very hard to get issues of health. I put a story on in 1979 about a woman who had a mastectomy and people practically had heart attacks. You never said that word. You never said cancer. You said the C word. And this stuff didn't go in prime time. So you just have to stick, I had to stick to my guns. Now, I think we're a little too saturated with, oh, this person, oh, let's stick them on the air. Oh, very sad. Okay. I worry a little that we're almost oversaturated with people who've suffered something, and it just becomes a bump out into a commercial. I don't know what to do about that, but I worry about that.
Yeah. I think the only other thing I have, and then just this quick, and then we'll open it up to everyone else, is when you are on the air, you are super, super conversational, everything. Like, is there any like particular tips and tricks you have for like keeping that friendliness when you're on air with people?
Always know what you're starting with. Always know how you're ending. Real quick anecdote. I was on the Today Show filling in for Jane Pauley. I was so excited because I'd written the newscast, and I was doing the newscast back in the day. They did the newscast. And I was so excited. I thought I was clever in this end story. So I'm reading it, and I finish and I sit there, and boom, teleprompter goes, and I'm like, I had no idea what I was supposed to do, and the prompter was gone. And suddenly I hear the floor manager. Oh my God, he was legendary. He's going, what? And on the Today Show live, I'm leaning and going, what? And he's going, what? And I look up and I see there's a TV. I see over my right hand shoulder, it says James Watt, the new head of the EPA. And yet, but I couldn't figure that out. So he's trying to tell me that James Watt is coming up next. And I should just say, and I'm like frozen now. I'm like, what? And I'm telling you, this went on for 30 seconds. And finally he comes in the frame. You can see him in the frame. And he goes, "This is today on NBC." And I went, "This is today on NBC." Now, nobody died. Well, because that happened. That's the other thing to remember. Nobody died. It was actually pretty funny. In fact, now I pray for something to happen so that we can break that stiff kind of scripted thing. But always know where you're going. Always, you're doing the interview, you're watching the clock. Always know how you're going to wrap something up. And then it gives you so much more of a comfort zone to just be conversational. There are some interviews that you can't go off script. A lot of the interviews we do with the NPR reporters, they want us to just stick to what they are reporting for efficiency. But when you're doing an interview, just, see, don't stick with a script. Really use it, work hard, build your scaffolding, but then skate on top of it, and go off it. Don't go with a script. So somebody says something, listen, too many times I hear somebody says something and then I hear a question, which was like, what? Didn't you hear what they just said? So try to stay in that moment. Again, you're live. There's millions of people listening, but nothing you can do will kill anyone. So forget about that. Build your base, build your support, know what you're doing, read, have a script, to play off of if you need it, know your clock, know your time, and then just really listen. Yeah.
All righty. I'm sure after all those different stories and everything, some people have some questions or something they want to say. So
sure.
Bridget, our former news director before me.
Oh, yay.
Hi. Yeah, I was the former news director last year. Like Jay said, I'm Bridget. So first I want to thank you for being here. This has been super great hearing your stories. So I'm about to graduate and I'm trying to figure out where I should move to post-graduation to find a job. And I'm originally from Boston, actually Melrose, which is right above Boston. And so I love it there. I've done a lot of journalism stuff there in the past. But I want to hear from your perspective, working in Boston for so long, why did you choose Boston to make your home as a place to report in, and what's so special about it to be reporting in Boston?
I don't know if you heard in the beginning, it was a complete mistake. I drove here thinking that Sesame Street was made at Channel 2, which Channel 2, it would make sense, right? Because they do all this great stuff. So it was kind of an accident and it turned into a happy one for me. This place has been so kind to me because the kind of work I've been doing for so long, I'm also a public figure. I mean, I do 50 events a year and it's a responsibility. I mean, when I did Evening Magazine, and 1 out of every 2 people, ask your parents, maybe your grandparents, I think your grandparents, 1 out of every 2 people watched our show. So I thought this was the friendliest place in the world because people said, "Hey, Robin, hi." I thought, "Oh, that's so nice. How does someone know my name?" It's the power of media, but it's also a big responsibility. So it was kind of an accident, however, a happy one. I wish, and sometimes I was still in New York because I'm homesick sometimes. I did the Today Show in New York. So there's that. But you know what I would say to you? Small town America. Go to the middle of the country. Be a one-man band. Go to a place, and think about it. I'll do this for 2 years. And really listen to a place you've never been to before. And learn about it. Because we are too siloed right now. We're just too siloed. The media's too siloed. And by the way, that will add to your value because people at networks know they're missing people who really listen to voices in the middle of the country or a rural area. Go to a place where you can shoot, cut, report, anchor. Are you looking for broadcasting or print?
I'm thinking mostly radio related stuff and podcasting. Yeah.
Oh my God, go to public radio somewhere in the middle of the country to, agree to live on a shoestring for, make a plan for a year and then use that and tell people, this is what I did. I'm from Boston, but I did this because I wanted to come here. Yeah, the jobs right now here are jobs everywhere, as are pretty competitive because, people have had to lay people off. But I would go get an experience somewhere else. Yeah, and I would live abroad if I could. I can't anymore. That's my nephew who's, oh God, I was so nervous. He got all these jobs. He never mentioned me. He got all these jobs by himself. Now he's in the New York Times. And he says, well, I told them, I'll go to the White House staff, but, my goal is to be a foreign correspondent. I said, okay, just don't fight him too much. You're going to go to the White House, but I would, if I were young, do a foreign correspondent or foreign posting somewhere, some kind of foreign work, but I'm not fluent in anything. So it probably would be a stupid idea, but, yeah, I think some of our best reporters right now are CNN's foreign correspondents. They are extraordinary. I bow to them. Their work is stunning, and I think the best in the business right now. So, but small town America. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
just to
you.
piggyback off of that, like there definitely is a big like media bubble issue. Like there's so much more to understand the country than just New York City, than LA. Like there's so much in between.
Oh, especially now. How do we, as media, this is I said I was going to say something about NPR. I love being an NPR, and I get to do things, bird songs, that I wouldn't do anywhere else. Everything else has turned into talking heads about politics. I hate it, and I think it's uncomfortable and unhealthy. It's cheap. You don't see a lot of, when I was on the Today Show, well, habits have changed too, but there were three of us, one at each network, that did these glorious little movies on the Today Show. I would go out like a polio patient who was in an iron lung for 30 years would leave for the first time with a portable lung. I mean, do these beautiful little movies. Well, there was a moment where the world changed, and it's going to change for you guys, keep changing. But people used to sit down as a family and have breakfast. Imagine that. Like everybody would sit down and you'd watch the Today Show or, whatever the shows were on. And there would be this 10-minute piece that I did that the whole family saw together. That is so gone. And now it's like, features are 2.5 minutes and nobody's, it's all podcasts is your goal and everything. So that there's been a sea change there. But, I think that you are operating in a more difficult time because there's so many of you. But on the other hand, you have so many options. You have podcasting, you have streaming, you have, cool stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like how on traditional broadcasts, I think radio is a little different. NPR specifically is a little bit different, but
oh, well, I was going to finish that thought. God, I'm tired. I've been up since 5. I'm sorry, that was going to be my point. While I'm so honored to be at NPR and I have this incredible post, I miss having an audience of 1 out of every 2 people, because you knew you were talking to everyone on the political spectrum, and you had to be respectful of that. And you could be respectful of that because people weren't making insane claims about, people eating children. But it was so great to, walk around Boston and know I was talking to conservatives, I was talking to liberals, I was talking to progressives, I was talking to Republicans, Democrats, and I miss that. And NPR, I don't know how to, it's a huge operation, but there's a percentage of America that would never listen to us. They don't even listen to Fox. They don't even watch Fox anymore. They've moved over to Newsmax and ONE. And I'm crushed by that. I mean, that's an audience I'd love to listen to and speak to more, and it's just not going to happen at NPR. They don't want to. So.
Yeah, Madeline, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm also a graduating senior, and I feel like a big conversation in our curriculum right now in the journalism program kind of is helping us tackle like corporate versus independent media and managing, you know, the drive to want to be a part of something while, upholding different integrity of editorial standards. And you mentioned that you love being a part of NPR, but that you also miss having your 1 out of 2 American audience. And I feel like that really represents well the balancing act. And I was wondering if you could speak to that from like a personal perspective as a journalist.
Yeah. Well, what I try to do is, as much as possible, not sound like I'm speaking to the choir, even if I may be. First of all, I hear from people all the time on social media, and we do have lots of conservatives. I don't want to leave that impression. We have tons of people of all different parties. We know that. Hi, Kat. But we don't have that core Trump group, for instance. And I don't know what to do about that. But I think the most dangerous thing NPR can do is give up on that. We talk all the time about how do we reach people. And it's tricky because we're radio. So here's an interesting thing about radio that I learned, and I use it all the time. I read this great squib once. The main difference between radio and television, everybody says, oh, television is the pictures. I always loved sound. We were the first to use radio mics, my shows. And one of my favorite things of all time is I was about 30 feet away from the closed bedroom door of that dying young man with AIDS. All you see is the shot of the hall and this closed door. And this was after our first meeting with the family erupted, and, we just hung back. And again, remember, we were recording everything there because we just assumed we're going to give this to them. And we ended up using it in the film. Jay, you saw this, but down this hall, it's just a shot of a hall and a door. You hear from behind that door, how you doing? How you doing, son? I know, it's a killer. And the son says, not good, Dad. Not good. I think this is it. Woo! Greatest moment of television I ever made, and there's no picture. So there's that. But in radio, you do have one problem, which is people can't look back like they can in print, or they can't look at a chyron. So I read once that when you're reading a paragraph in a newspaper, your eye flicks back. You don't know it, but your brain flicks your eye back 55 times. Like, now I get that. Okay, what was that? Now I apply it to this. In radio, it's going to be very linear and very kind of like storytelling, and very, just A to B to C to D, because nobody can go back to figure something out. But the other thing about radio is a lot of our listeners, there's a real tension. I would love to get these people on to hear more of their point of view and maybe talk to them about it. But some of it is so crazy, Pizzagate and everything, that our listeners don't want it amplified. So you come onto that. When do you give somebody airtime because you want to, recognize them? You want to let your listeners hear maybe how crazy it is, or hear what their fears are, or whatever it is, without amplifying it, without giving it a platform. It's a big conversation right now in radio. I think the best thing you can do is move there. I would move into a city that isn't Ithaca. Where are you from, Madeline?
I'm from Seattle, and we have a really small media market. Very strong NPR stations,
Yeah,
but the jobs that are there are like veteran jobs.
Yeah, I would move. Well, in Oregon, you have a chance to move into kind of real pockets of this in Oregon, but I don't know what the broadcasting is there. I do not push the cat away. We love the cat. I would, I would go to a small town somewhere. I really would. And I would make that your goal. I want to, anthropological almost. Although we can never sound we just cannot sound anthropological on the air. You don't want to be that NPR person who goes, tell me about that widget because I don't have that widget. I think, make like you've just stumbled onto a tribe, when actually it's people from New Jersey. You just don't want to sound like, but as, make it repertorial, but you're finding out about people you didn't grow up with. I would do that. And I think there might be more jobs. You just have to say to yourself, here's what I can live on for a year. And by the way, the cost of living is going to be nothing anyway in some of these small towns. But yeah, Seattle would be tough to jump into right away. Yeah. That's a tough time.
I mean, Jess, do you have anything to say about this? You just did a great interview with someone who, is a reporter, but their mother is so into the QAnon stuff, and they had to like bridge that gap. If you could talk about that, that would be.
Oh, wow.
So just for context, I had a show called About This, and I just interviewed journalists and discussed their work. So this was the final episode, and I interviewed BuzzFeed reporter Albert Samaha, and he wrote an essay in BuzzFeed News talking about his relationship with his mom, who is a devout QAnon supporter.
Did I hear this somewhere else? Did I hear this air somewhere?
Maybe.
I might have heard this.
Maybe.
Somewhere.
I mean, yeah, it was like a great essay. I wouldn't be surprised if he interviewed elsewhere. But yeah, it was his relationship. I mean, the thing that struck me most was how understanding he was with her. And he got to a place where he realized if he wants to have any relationship with her, which he does, it was always the two of them. Like, he was an only son, she was an immigrant. They were very like close growing up until she became like into QAnon. And he just said, we stopped persuading each other. Like, we stopped fighting about it. It's now coming from a place of understanding. And he still tells her she's wrong about, the reckoning coming where the deep state is all going to get arrested in a few weeks. But
the detente that's happening now is happening in a lot of families. There's a great book out. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of it, but I can't wait to get it. And it's, how do you talk? And it's meant for families and stuff, but as a journalist, I want it. And one of the points that they say to make is, you listen and you're very tender and gentle, because somebody who deeply believes something, left or right, will not let go of it. They won't. Nothing you can say or do, they won't. The one thing that can perhaps be a little bit of a wedge is listing all the things that did not happen. So no one from the deep state was, and Trump did not get inaugurated on such and such. And how come this didn't happen? And the guy went to the pizza place with a gun, but there were no children there. And, you just unspool as they keep setting new dates when this thing is going to happen. And that's how they work with cults. They just very gently go, oh, but this and this and this and this, and then this deadline, passed. Anyway, I want to get this book. If you Google some of the stuff I said, but that sounds wonderful. What a great podcast.
It was really fun. I'm glad I did it. I'm graduating too. So it was like a final project for the semester.
Why not try to make it a money generating podcast? Just saying.
Yeah.
There's great podcast incubators. I mean, if you're doing a podcast now, I mean, that 6 Degrees thing, yeah, she should do that. You could do a podcast interviewing journalists about great interviews or something. I'd be available. No, you should. I don't know if there's a proprietary thing with Ithaca, but I would keep going. It's hard to start. I mean, if you got something going.
I had another, or just
please go. Yeah.
I was wondering, and you touched upon this throughout your talk, but what strikes you when you hear something that you want to that you think is a story? Like what are usually the components of that?
It's physical. I interviewed Andrew Wyeth once. I don't know if you know Andrew Wyeth, but when I was in school, Andrew Wyeth, we always had his, posters on the wall, great American artist. I did the second interview with him ever after Thomas Hoving, who was the great art book interviewer. And I found Andrew Wyeth because there were phone books back then, and I looked up his name in the main phone book, and there was Betsy Wyeth, his wife, and she answered the phone. She said, "Sure, come up." So I'm interviewing Andrew Wyeth, and he doesn't want to be interviewed, and he left. Actually, he says, you don't want to talk to me," and he gets up and he leaves. And I held on to him by the microphone cord, and that's how I got him back in. But once this interview settled down, I said that to him. "How do you know when a painting's good?" And he says, "The hair rises on the back of my neck." And the hair rises on the back of my neck. I get this like, whoa. It happened when I heard about Father's Son Comes Back, the new movement. I mean, you just train yourself to like have a physical reaction. And I just wrote a foreword for somebody's book and said this there, and I think it's true. This was a book about people learning to talk about illness, because once you start to talk about it, you actually can change your narrative. You're not a victim of the illness. The illness is happening. It sucks, but there's these tools they take them through to find a better narrative that they can have. And the whole idea is your story is worth it. And I said, and I swear this is something I believe, and I've believed it for 48 years. If something really grabs you, you will not be the only one. You know, they talk about how all the ideas in the world are flowing all around us. Everybody, like 100 people are having the same idea you're having, and it's this, this, and that's why you have to do it, because someone's going to do it. It's the same with stories. If you are like, whoa. So I would just train yourself to listen and to think about that. That's all.
One more question.
Sure.
So do you have advice on how to do projects? Like, let's say you had a documentary idea or just like a podcast idea, but you have no money, you really don't have any resources. What would you say to do?
Gather some friends and say, let's, who's interested in this? And you have to find the people who have the same kind of, oh my God. And can we all do this together? Will you help me do this? And then we'll see if we can sell it. If we can't sell it, and there's so many avenues now, all the streaming and, websites, and you just get some friends and you build a barn and you just agree, we're going to do this. We don't have any money. You won't have any money for a long time. And so it's just kind of accepting we have no money, we eat ramen, and we have this idea that's making us nuts. Isn't it great? We live in a time where we don't have to buy film. You don't have to buy film. You can use your iPhone, to make a film. And you just find the people who are willing. They buy in, and maybe everybody has side jobs, and you agree to do it for 5 hours on the weekends. And you, the man part just came home. And you just do it. Just do it. My greatest regrets are the things I didn't do. Yeah. And there's also, having said that, one of the people who joins you should be the person who went to the Park School and studied financing. Can I tell you, who I went to college with? Bob Iger, who years later, when I was up for something on ABC, it was I can't even remember what it was. And he was by then president of ABC. He was a business major at Ithaca, cute as a button. We knew each other, we never dated. And he came up to me. I had just done some stuff there, and I was filling in for something, and he came up to me and says, "You should have dated me at Ithaca." But there are people out there, right, Bob Iger? I'm an Ithaca College student. Robin Young was speaking to us. She said, "Write me, write you. We're doing something. We're looking for some funding. If you want to help some Ithaca, you have to start thinking outside the box. Grants. So what is it you're doing? Are you doing something on the environment? Go look for the grants available. It might be $2,000. Who cares? Go look for grants that are available. There's a whole world. And if you're going to be an independent filmmaker or something like that, you really got to get schooled in it. Send an email to Ken Burns. People will, many times they can't respond. Sometimes they can, but I would, look for the money, look for the change in the couch. I had my meals paid for by a Rotary Club in Northern California. I have a Peabody. That's what I did. Yeah, find the spare change.
Yeah, I'll do Jordan and Vedant, but I just wanted to say, like, for passion projects, whatever, this is the time if you really want to like pursue something, you have an idea, don't wait on it. Yeah, we have so many resources here, and I mean, I'm sure as you guys have.
Oh yeah, before you leave the school.
Yeah.
Oh my God, do something on the side. You got all the equipment there. Yeah, absolutely. Good point.
I've made enough of you record on these stupid things, so you can figure it out. And
by the way, Jay, would you just tilt your head to the left? Just tilt your head to the left.
What do you mean?
On your shoulder. To the left. Like this. Tilt your head to your left. That's your right.
Yeah.
That is Larry Bird behind you.
Yeah. My cousin made a painting.
That. Okay, I kept thinking I was seeing number 33. All right, I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah. But just for an example, before last semester started, Jess sent me an email of just like, I have this idea about this video game where it's from the 80s. Indiana Jones fought dictators in Czechoslovakia. I'm like, yeah, do that.
Do that.
But
do that.
Jordan,
yeah. Do it. Yeah. But let me just say, it's half, before Jordan speaks, it's half what might be, you might just go with your heart. I'm dying to do this. But if not, it's sort of like, I really, really like this, but I think this also would be successful. You can also be thinking commercially too. There's no harm in that. Jordan.
Hi. So going back off to what you said about Rod Serling, where he was like, oh, if you have an idea, like, don't let it die or whatever.
Born in your head. Yeah.
And so with your passion for long form, storytelling that you can't necessarily do at NPR, is there any like idea for stories or any story that you just like want to do like really, really bad? Like,
so funny you mentioned.
Like one idea.
So funny you mentioned. As I'm thinking about this forward that I'm writing, but you've all done the math. I just turned 70, and suddenly there's like, oh, you don't have all this time in the world. It's like profound. It's a big deal. It's all the other birthdays were like, whatever. This is like, oh, and I want to do something that I don't think anyone else will care about. And it's completely wrong for the moment we're in. We're in a moment of figuring out, thank God, race relations. And we still have women's, the Me Too thing. Don't forget about that. And, hate and conspiracy. And did we ever really address the Civil War? No, we did not. And, all that stuff. That's what. But I have this great, great, great aunt from Amsterdam, New York, born to Dutch parents. I have Dutch lineage. And my whole life, her paintings were on our wall, and I still have them. They were like a totem. Her paintings of Dutch windmills, but also portraits of the family. And they were the thing that always got saved when things hit the fan or whatever. And it was always, our great, great, great aunt, Aunt Mary, who once went to live in the castle with Queen Wilhelmina in Holland. Like, I don't know why I didn't think deeper about that's really? And you just heard my age. I have her paintings. They're all upstairs. I knew that there was this wonderfulness to her, and she had this single life. She died in 43, so she spanned that generation, late 1800s, early 1900s. And I thought, maybe that'll be a good story about how this woman becomes a successful artist at that time, that turn of the last century. And just recently, my mom's gone, her great aunt is her aunt. I started, really, like, I think I want to do this. I really want to find out more about her. Guess what? She was one of two women that went to Paris to study with Whistler in his school in Paris. Once I contacted these other people in upstate New York, I put out kind of like, does anybody have paintings from Mary Vanderveer? And like, come to find out, they show her, they write all these things about her. I found a relative like we're second cousins or something, who also has paintings. I'm going up there to look. And I'm thinking, went to study with Whistler, traveled as a single. That's a cool story. I'm thinking Masterpiece Theater, maybe, the paintings are gorgeous. She was shown at World Fairs. Oh my God, I just found out a few weeks ago, somebody who knows I'm like trying to do this, sent me the Amsterdam News. This is the little 2-sheet from Amsterdam, New York, celebrating their famous artist daughter, Mary van der Veer, who went and studied with Whistler and was shown at World Fairs and lived in a converted barn, this incredible world-traveled life. And she did it all confined to a wheelchair from the polio she got at the age of 3 that deformed her hands. What? So my kind of like hair on the back of my neck is now, I'm out of my mind hair on the back of my head, but it was pulling that little thread, something, and again, maybe it was just going to be a home movie for my family. Here's Mary van der Veer. Now it's like, are you kidding me? So that's what I want to do. I don't expect anybody to want it. I don't expect it. I mean, it's completely, Dutch woman. It's just completely the wrong thing, but I really want to tell that story. Yeah.
Yeah, Vedant, go ahead.
Oh my God, if anyone steals it, I will kill you. That's my last thing. Do not tell people that thing that makes your heart go. Don't tell anyone. Because remember that thing I said about, oh, it's all out there. And I was working on a film. I actually had $1 million from Billy Wilder's daughter. And I kept talking about it and talking about it. It seized me. It was about my high school music teacher and what happened I had a friend who was killed at Kent State. Jeffrey Miller, the one lying on the ground with Allison leaning over him. And my high school erupted, and they brought the choir members back, and we did this huge performance of Virgil Thompson, and it was incredible. And I'm like, I went like this one day, literally in the early 90s. Oh my God, that's a movie. And I started, interviewing people, and I'm working on it, and I'm talking about it. And the next thing I know, Mr. Holland's opus comes out, and I had dinner with people who wrote that film. And USA Today wrote me up and had an interview with me and my music teacher, who's crazy that I was going to make this movie about. And suddenly we're on all the daytime talk shows as the real Mr. Holland. And he's like a crazy guy, but I never made my movie. So don't keep it and do it.
All right, Vedant, go ahead.
Hi, first of all, I just want to thank you for agreeing to be here on such a late night. And my question is that, so I saw that you did a piece on the India COVID crisis recently, and I'm covering it this weekend for Ithaca Now. And I'm just wondering, so with events like India's COVID crisis, as well as you mentioned the AIDS documentary, and also the Boston Marathon, since it was so close to you, do you have any tips for how to stay level-headed during highly emotional events like these ones?
You stay level-headed, but you do not stay unemotional. That's impossible. So India, I mean, so that's an A1 news story. We had a reporter from the BBC on Monday, and yesterday we had a researcher. It's at the website, and it's, this guy, I could tell he was like, his world is upside down. Everything's insane there. Again, you're on sacred ground. You are on sacred ground. And to be kind of clinical and talk about numbers so in that interview, it's still going to be fact-based, but it's like, you say, oh, I'm so sorry. It sounds horrible. And at the end, you say, best of luck. I really wish you a lot of luck. What is that, partisan? So when you are doing work like that, you can have compassion. It doesn't interfere with you being a journalist. It doesn't interfere. It doesn't make you a partisan. It doesn't make you take a side. Some things, there are no sides, right? Pandemic in India is bad. There's no like other side to pandemic in India. So I think allow yourself to have the feelings that you have if you have family there. Do you think Fareed Zakaria doesn't talk about his mother who just died of COVID? No, that informs him. That's informing his, in India, she died in India. That's informing his reporting. It informs you. It's okay. And the fact that I knew the Boston bomber and had an opinion about him that wasn't being expressed, and we got in a lot of trouble for that. But everybody, Rolling Stone did a big thing on it, and at the FBI, everybody agreed this kid there was no clue this was happening. We were right. But the other thing is you can't not say it, right? You can't hide it. I'd have to disclose, right? So, for instance, I'm not presuming, but if you're reporting on India and you have family there, that would be perfectly appropriate for you to say. Perfectly appropriate. It adds to your coverage.
Yeah. I mean, that's Vedant's working on this with our just announced going to be news director next year, Himadri, who is, because of restrictions and everything, is studying abroad in her home in Delhi.
Oh God.
She got COVID.
Oh.
So
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if you saw, there's a great interview going around. It's on CNN. What's his name? Jeff Gettleman, fabulous reporter for the New York Times, who's in India. I mean, he's just a wreck. He's like, I'm going to get sick. There's no question in my mind. I mean, good luck with that, Vedant. But I think, you know what? You'll feel a hell of a lot better doing it than not doing it. It's going to be painful to do, but gives you some control. That's the other thing. I do a lot of reporting on things I feel I don't have any control over, and it gives me some control over it. Reporting.
Yeah, Jordan.
Yeah, I think off with that as well, with the recent, breaking news, the Chauvin trial verdict coming out last week, and then yesterday with Biden's first address to Congress. Actually listened to your story this afternoon that you did with Representatives Gottheimer and Fitzgerald on NPR. And so I know earlier I said that, politics isn't really your thing. You don't think that NPR should really be diving that much into, politics as they do. So when you are doing these new kind of breaking stories, whatever, how are you able to, find those sources that will help, bridge that divide more rather than, start to divide it?
It's hard. It's hard. This is the Common Sense Caucus or whatever they are. It's not easy. But, we're NPR. I mean, we are the only NPR show that's not at NPR headquarters in Washington. So all of our editorial comes from NPR. Some of our guests get funneled to us. They didn't get on too late for morning edition, funnel them to Here and Now kind of thing. But it's very, very hard to find those voices. And I will say something that I really resent that has happened. And you see a lot of I was looking at some sort of Pew Research Center talking about right-wing media and left-wing media. And I'm like, no, we're not left-wing media. We are, but that's the corner we've been forced into. It's been since Watergate that this has been a concerted effort to build a media machine. And this is not a partisan thing to say, William Crystal and Roger Ailes walked away from Watergate and the Washington Post revealing Richard Nixon and the break-in. And they said, we are never, ever again going to have a newspaper take our guy down. We're going to have our own newspapers. We're going to have our own think tanks to provide spokespeople to our own TV station. And they created Fox. And as I got to say to Bill Crystal, he's become a virulent Republican, conservative, anti-Trumper. And as I said to him when I got to interview him, by the way, how much of this is your fault? You're the one who said, let's not have mainstream media. We're going to go create this. And then you lost control of it. They lost control of it, but in this time, it is so hard to find people. And it's also hard to find people on the right who believe that what we do, which is, completely fact-based, if there's an occasion where we let our own personal feelings out, like maybe, I think we have to be tougher, let's say, on Joe Biden's speech, you know, we do have to question. I don't think we go where Fox is going and saying that he's demented, but optics are important. So I wanted to ask my reporter, and I didn't have time, but I wanted to say, and how did he come across? Because as you know, there's a swath of America that's being told he's demented. I think you do need to ask that question, but we're not left. Oh my God, my friends on the left find that insulting. You know, progressives like, you know, AOC, they're like, honey, you are not progressive at NPR. That's WBAI, you know. So I don't know, it's really, really hard. And I hope that like other times of fever pitch in this country, I hope it starts to wane. I don't think it's going to soon. But by the way, that also, you know, start reading, start exploring, you know, if you're looking for those people, look for them. I mean, literally, you guys can Google less controversial conservative voices, you know? I mean, people have said to me, what did you do? You know, I'm producing segments. I was a news anchor for a while. And what did you do before Google? And I said, librarians. You made friends with librarians all across the country. And one specialty might be geography, and another was a classical. I said, I need a piece of music to go. Okay, you need this one. You know, another was an expert on tax law. You know, you made friends with librarians, research librarians, and that's what you did. You got Google.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Cam?
Thank you for coming. Really appreciate the talk. But I did want to ask you kind of about how you went from being behind the scenes in the control room producing and doing all that, then to becoming now on air with millions of listeners across the country and the world.
Yeah, it was that mix in the 70s of just being the right place at the right time. Now, again, I come from a family we're very expressive. We sing. This is so old for you guys, but did you ever see the movie Deer Hunter? Deer Hunter, which is another movie you have to see. Oh my God. So here's your list. Deer Hunter. You must see Deer Hunter. Philadelphia. And you don't have to see this, but my brother was in Deer Hunter. He was in Hair. He was in, Salvador. A lot of 70s movies. My younger brother was in Footloose. We were very theater minded. And so I've come from a kind of expressive family. I love the behind the scenes. I mean, when I was a kid, I worked at a summer camp, and I said to the head of the camp, I want to put on plays. And we ended up doing Peter Pan with the full flying rig from New York City. How I didn't kill some kid, flying them. I don't know, but I've always felt that. And I don't know if you heard the beginning of my comments, I thought I was going to be a puppeteer, and I still might be a puppeteer. It just enchants me. But then I just took this turn, and so I was a sports station, and I'm working behind the scenes. And then the station started to have requirements that they hire women in order to keep their licenses. And that's how I ended up on radio and started being a radio person. And that's how I ended up hosting a TV show. That it just was all an accident, and I'm a lucky, lucky person. I also did have the skills when those things came around, because I've been a producer. That show, Evening Magazine, that I did, you had to produce pieces. You couldn't just come, you had to pitch it, so that's how it happened. It was, yeah. And I still love doing it all. Very few other NPR hosts will edit. But that's my background, so I edit. I edited the Birds piece today. Very proud of that. So anyway.
There's one channel or one station that does a whole podcast just about birds, like Bird Note.
Oh,
have you ever heard of it?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, there's just tons of stuff like that, and it's a little dirty secret. You can't go wrong. Let me see where that piece is. Birding is the race cars, NASCAR, and birding. If you want ratings, that's the skinny there. I'm just looking to see where it is on our most popular. I tell you, the piece I'm most proud of this week, it's number one. The piece I'm most proud of this week, I don't know if it's trending anymore, was about a Black runner from Charlottesville, Virginia. I think NPR is gonna, if you have a chance, go to listen. It was way long. A lot of people get uncomfortable because it's 11 minutes long. Yeah, it's not trending anymore. So, just go look back through the shows. I think it aired on Tuesday. Just talking to this guy about starting a running club because he's Black, and in 2010 he went out running in his Black neighborhood and didn't saw no one who looked like him. So he started this running club, and I was going to be a sweet story about what has grown to this huge, diverse running club where all these white people can now come and join him, and they go through the Black neighborhoods, and it's like they can get 100 people at a time. But we started talking about Ahmaud Arbery at the end, running while Black. Oof. That's my favorite story from the week.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any more questions before we wrap up? All right. Robin, any
Jay?
final thoughts you want to leave on?
Oh, just, don't get cynical. Fall in love with something that, you're working on. Want to tell stories. There will be perhaps some public, acknowledgement. You might even get to be a star. But the number one thing is the story. And I would, it's going to be hard right now, but I would start doing things now. Start looking at what you've been doing. Is that something that's worth taking to someone? To pitch to someone, to say, look, I've been working on this. NPR might air one of your podcasts. We're desperate for material. So I just always love it. When you don't love it, don't do it. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you listening to some of our stuff.
That's great.
And it's been a weird as hell year.
Yeah, I did want to say that. I'm so sorry about that. It is, because you're not meeting people. You're at the age when you should be, meeting people, but you won't forget this. You'll be, remembering this. My best friends in the world is still my Ithaca College roommate. She lives up in Marblehead, and she's still my best friend. And the 6 of us that lived in the apartments are very, very close. And, it is a time that, you will remember it. And it just is so hard right now with what you're having to do. I feel badly about that, but at least you're not on dance floors puking your brains out. I mean, that was a waste of time. That was stupid. With Buffalongo playing. But yeah, I feel bad about that, but keep writing about it. Keep making radio about it. You can do something about it. A lot of young people can't.
Yeah. So I think we're going to leave it on that. Is there anything you want to leave, follow on Twitter or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, follow me at Here Now Robin. I suck. When Twitter was launched, they launched it on Scott Simon's show on NPR, and I was emailing him during this while he's got Twitter on, and I was like, Scott, what are you doing? I can't handle emails. You're doing something else. And he wrote me back. He goes, they're making me. We're debuting Twitter on. It was a deal they made. It was well, he's got over 1 million Twitter followers because it debuted on his show. And I'm the one going, this is stupid. It makes more work for us. So I have this tiny little group, but we're a happy bunch. And, do that. My email is rc as in cat young, rcyoung bu.edu. It may take me a while to get back, but I will get back. Right, Jay?
We figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me send that in the chat here. But yeah, no, I appreciate this so much. This was so great. I think everyone here got, something out of it, and this was just, it was great to talk to you after, all the correspondence and everything. Just
Well, my pleasure, and just, keep me posted, and, maybe we'll do it again down the road, but just in the meantime, just best of luck to all of you. And, you just have faith in yourselves.
Yeah. And if you're ever up in the area again, maybe
Ever
getting
up in
lunch
the
with, maybe
area.
getting lunch with Bob Kerr or something like that.
One last thing I want to say. There's a book out that came out about Jessica Savage. Bull doo-doo. It made me so angry. Jessica Savage is a lovely, lovely woman who came through the Park School, and there were some people who savaged her, and it was terrible. But yes, Jessica and Bob Kerr, who's just the nicest person in the world. Well, my niece married a guy from Ithaca who's deeply, deeply invested there. He owns the organic, the family owns the organic farm up above Teganic Falls, the Beaucaire family. They used to have restaurants and stuff. So I'm there all the time. So I'll let you know once the pandemic lifts.
Perfect.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.